Hello, thanks for joining us. My name is Kyle Murray. I'm the Dean of the Lazaridis School of Business and Economics. You've joined our podcast, Coffee with Kyle, and we're aiming to post about one of these a month on topics of business and economics interest to the community. This is the first podcast in our series. I'm delighted to welcome Jeff Borg. Jeff is a graduate of our undergraduate business program and co-founder of Summit Energy, headquartered in Mississauga, Ontario. Just a little bit about Summit Energy. The company is an energy marketer. They've been supplying natural gas and electricity to homes and businesses since 2006, with operations in Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, and the United States. Jeff and I met a few months ago for lunch, and I got a tour of Summit's operations in Mississauga. We had a great discussion about the importance of careers in sales. And in my opinion, and I think it's the case, Jeff shares this opinion, that the sales role is too often undervalued and underappreciated. Yet it drives success in many organizations and can be a really very lucrative career. So today's podcast is about careers in sales, and let's pour into it. Jeff, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kyle. Happy to be here and looking forward to exploring this topic, which is pretty close to my heart, being sales and sales management.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, I have my coffee here with my Summit mug.
Okay, and I have mine with my
Nice.
my
All right.
Summit.
We're set and ready to go then. And I'm excited for the chance to learn from a Canadian business leader, one of our exceptional grads, all-around great guy, Jeff Borg. So Jeff, let's start a little bit with your just origin story. How did your career kind of progress from the time you were a student at the Lazaridis School, or Laurier at that time, and to your current role with Summit Energy?
Yeah, great. I graduated from Welford Laurier in 1988, which for those people listening probably seems like a long time ago, but for me it doesn't. I was lucky enough to be part of the co-op program. So through that, I got an opportunity to work in the auto industry initially, and the computer industry for 2 work terms. And I think the great thing about that experience was that it led me to understand what I did and did not want to do from a industry and career perspective, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But after Laurier, I went on to do an MBA at Michigan State University, which I actually went to with a friend of mine from Laurier. He studied finance, and I studied marketing, emphasis in marketing. And when I left Michigan State, I was thinking about where I wanted to work and what I wanted to do. And I had this view that I learned at Laurier, or that I formed at Laurier, that I wanted to be in an industry that had a large number of customers, where you could make a small amount of revenue from a large amount of customers. And I was interested in the energy industry, and that's where I went. I went to the energy industry. I worked for Ontario Hydro, which was the 3rd largest electric utility in North America at the time, and went into the marketing department, which was very interesting because the angle on marketing at that point in time was to convince consumers from residential all the way up to commercial industrial to use less energy. And I found that interesting from a sales and marketing, well, really from a marketing perspective. And from there, from my entry into the energy business, I saw deregulation approaching the industry, and moved into the deregulated side. And about 22 years ago, started my own business with a partner that's called Summit Energy in Canada, SFE Energy in the US. And took that to become the largest privately held energy marketing company in North America. So the business, we sell, or we supply consumers, residential, all the way to commercial industrial customers with electricity and natural gas, typically on a fixed price, fixed term basis. So for example, 5-year fixed price electricity and natural gas in 9 US states and 3 Canadian provinces. So that's a thumbnail of a 35-year history.
Great, thanks, Jeff. I like that. I know you and I are both fans of Zig Ziglar, who's a legendary sales trainer, and one of his famous quotes is the road to success is always under construction, and I like that one because yeah, career paths are really not very linear. And
No.
well, as a student in school, you might think, well, I'm going to get a job and I'll just work at this job, and that's kind of where I'm going to go. I think most people realize that they are in a role for 10 or 15 or more years that, yeah, their career paths are not linear, that they do bounce around. And yours is a great story from starting in the auto industry right up to founding an energy business.
Yeah, I think the benefit, the key for me in in what I learned at Laurier, I guess converting what I learned at Laurier, the process at Laurier, and into my career. As I mentioned earlier, I think the case methodology was really instrumental in allowing me to understand, to see a lot of businesses and understand them from a from the I guess from the vantage point of a case method, really thinking about it. And I knew at that time in the 80s and early 90s, a lot of wealth was being created in the telco industry and um, in the network TV. So telco, cable TV, a lot of wealth was being created by these businesses that had a subscription based model, and I saw that as being super interesting. And as that opportunity began to evolve in the energy business, I deviated from my original career path, staying within the field that I was in, and saw an opportunity to get involved in that, and was able to take it.
That's great. Yeah. So one of the things we want to talk about this morning is the sales career. And I know
Yes.
you've kind of built this organization as a sales organization from the ground up. So tell us a little bit about your approach to that, how sales has kind of evolved over time at Summit Energy, and what just basically what you think about sales as a career.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think I mentioned to you when we met, I had a one of the moments I remember most vividly at Laurier was in fourth year taking a course that in those days was called industrial marketing. And the professor started that, his introduction to the course was that 85% of products, of commerce was done across a desk, face to face, in a face to face sales environment, as opposed to what we learn a lot of about in general marketing is through advertising, through TV, through to use an example, Procter and Gamble and the selling of diapers and toothpaste and whatnot, and that really resonated with me. And so when I started my career in marketing, I very quickly identified with people in sales and saw that as something that was attractive to me. And so I think your question was, I guess to make a long story short, well, to tell you how I morphed personally into sales, and then I'll tell you about my sales organization. When I was working at Ontario Hydro, there was the concept of deregulation was approaching, and I was asked to take a role in dealing with the very large industrial customers and speaking directly with the CEOs of those businesses, or trying to get access to the CEOs of those businesses, the very senior people in those businesses, to try and put up a defensive shield or contractual shield against oncoming competitors. And that was in the pre-deregulation phase. And in doing so, I realized by taking some advice that from a mentor that the real value was going to be on the not on the defensive side, but on the offensive side, and in being in sales on the companies that were going to be actively participating in deregulation, like I am now. And so in my existing, in the business that we operate in, it's a very complex business in that we have supply arrangements with very large energy suppliers, whether it be British Petroleum, Shell, generators of electricity, producers of natural gas. We have department that is that does hedging. So for all intents and purposes, a trading organization. We have a very sophisticated finance department, regulatory compliance department, but all of that I refer to as the table dressing or the table setting. Because there's no business in our business and in many businesses, if you really break it down, until somebody creates a sale, until there's a demand for your product. In my case, a demand for the energy. So to think about my sales organization, and I'll talk a little bit about a high level. So in my company, we supply about 1 million customers across North America with their electricity and natural gas. And we've done all of that organically in, call it, 20 years. We have somewhere between 300 and 500 salespeople who sell directly face-to-face with residential consumers on a day in, day out basis. We also work with 300 to 400 commercial industrial brokers. And some brokers are an independent, one-person sales organization, but others are businesses, sales-oriented businesses that sell directly to large and medium-sized commercial industrial companies. To put some scale on that, the commissions, our business is largely a commissions-based business, face-to-face sales, commission-based. The commissions budget is roughly 70 million Canadian dollars a year. And I think so what that would look like is sales offices across North America, about 35 sales offices from Toronto, Ottawa, Vancouver, several offices in Ontario, Quebec, as I mentioned, and then all throughout the 9 US states that we operate in. Sales offices on the residential side and the C&I side, where our salespeople are going, are identifying customers and engaging them in a sales process that ultimately will lead them to procure their electricity and natural gas from our business on a 5-year fixed price, typically on a 3 to 5 year fixed price basis. And the concept is to insulate the consumer from the volatility of price of the price of energy, which, for those of you that aren't aware, electricity and natural gas are the two most price volatile commodities in existence.
So I know when people come to me and say, what should I do when I graduate? If you don't have a strong plan, one of the things that I always tell people is you should look for an opportunity to get engaged in a career that has some selling. Partly because you have a little bit more control over your compensation that way, but really because you learn so many valuable skills whenever you get an opportunity to do face-to-face sales, to build relationships, to try and convert prospects into customers and be part of that sales pipeline. So when people come to you, Jeff, and they say, look, you've built this really successful company, been in sales and managing a big sales organization for a number of years, what do you tell them about careers in sales?
Really great question. So I think before I answer that, I think I would say that the greatest joy in my career has been the development of salespeople. And that's watching salespeople, come in, get their training with our company, have no prior sales experience. They're trained here, they become confident, they become productive, and they rise through the ranks of sales and ultimately become sales managers, territory managers, etc. Tremendous amount of joy. So what I tell people about sales or about their career is generally try and find a career in an industry that you're interested in. I think that's first and foremost. If you're interested in the topic or the industry, you'll generally be good at it. But and from a sales perspective, and I think anytime that you can place yourself in front of the customers, that's a key part of the value chain. And through creating value, you ultimately are able to create wealth for yourself, whether that be through whether the business is base plus bonus or commissions, or just through the recognition that being a top performer in sales creates for you. But fundamentally, the reason that sales is, the reason I think that being in sales is a tremendous opportunity for young people is that you're always learning, B, you're demonstrating your worth, and your worth is very calculable and demonstratable. 3, you're not limited to being successful in that particular industry. People that are successful in sales or sales and marketing are able to morph or are able to move from one industry to another quite easily. And lastly, you will literally never be at a loss to find employment. If you're successful in sales, you will be able to very easily navigate a career. And the career doesn't entirely have to be in sales in a traditional sense. What you learn in sales, the skills that you learn in sales are really the skills in dealing with people. And when you're successful in dealing with people, then you will be successful in your career. But I think a great way to start is through sales. And whether that be, and I think, Kyle, I just want to just take another moment.
Sure.
Is I think a lot of people think that sales is a primarily, because in business school, a lot of people are thinking about finance and they're thinking about marketing. Those are the two streams. And I think that, and I think a lot of people on the marketing side think in the traditional P&G or IKEA or bricks and mortar type of environments. But I think I think people will be surprised when they get out in their careers in the finance side of the industry of industry to see how much of how many jobs and careers in the financial services industry ultimately are sales oriented and sales based.
Yeah, I remember early on a professor of mine in a marketing class saying, something along the lines of, everything is sales. And, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, of course,
right.
But I think what they were trying to say is you're always in a business where you're managing people and working with people. There's always an element of persuasion and of getting people on your side and convincing people the value that you or your product or brand bring to the market. And I think a lot of those skills are skills that you learn very quickly in sales. So that being said, it also seems like, and you mentioned this a little bit, but there's often a negative connotation to a sales job, like being a salesperson, maybe more so in Canada than in other places. I'd like to hear a little bit of your thoughts on that as well.
I think that's a very interesting observation. So, and I'll go back and say that I was guilty when I was at Laurier and evaluating co-op jobs. I do remember at one point a company wanting, was interested in me from in the sales perspective, and quite honestly, at that point, I wasn't evolved enough in my thinking on this subject to be interested. But in Canada, I've always found that people don't, the word salesman, saleswoman is not used. We typically use terms like, business development or like
account executive or
executive,
some other term,
not sales, because sales has a somewhat negative connotation here in Canada, where actually in the United States it does not. and people very much are moving the direction of sales, and wear the term salesperson as a badge of honor. A little less so here in Canada. But I think some of the misconceptions about sales are, I think some people have this sense that a salesperson is a particular stereotype of individual, a loud, confident, gregarious kind of individual who can dominate the room and is good at a cocktail party and this, that, and the other thing. And that's actually not the case. I think a good salesperson is somebody who is confident in themselves, confident in the subject matter with which they're that they're representing. They're primarily a very good listener. They're listening to the consumer, to the customer. They're also a student of the industry. They're a student of generally I'm struggling for words here, but I would say that in my experience, I've always told my salespeople that you need to be current on world events, politics. It's not about, you can't connect with everybody on sports. In my sales experience, I'm not a sports person. I don't know who's playing what game, what night, who's winning, who's losing, but I do know a lot about world events. And I typically connect with people. I'm very good at finding a way to connect with people. And ultimately, that's a very solid skill set in sales. But the traditional, life of the party is going to be, individual is going to be a great salesperson. That's not reality.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And again, I remember early on in my career, and I actually started my career in sales and in financial services before I went back to school. It allowed me to make enough money actually to go back to school and get a PhD. And I remember early on in that part of my career, somebody saying, yeah, there's not one kind of good salesperson. Like, you might think that it's a certain like personality type or one skill, but really there's all kinds of different salespeople, and what they might be good at, if there is a commonality, is exactly what you just said, which is that ability to connect with people.
Yeah, I think it's you need to be able to connect, develop some rapport, listen to what they're saying, use your listening skills, and then have enough knowledge about your particular product or offering or service to be able to tailor it and take the conversation into what you can do as a company, as a person, as a supplier to meet the needs that you heard or that you're hearing in the conversation as it evolves, and that's critical.
And what you just described really is the kind of people skills that are valuable in almost any situation, right? Being able to develop that rapport, listen well, kind of tailor the conversation or the product or the offering to the person you're talking to. I think that's part of why when I say to students, you should consider a career in sales early on, that I'm willing to make that kind of recommendation, because those core skills are just so important across really any kind of role, not even to mention your personal life. The ability
Exactly.
to listen, connect with people, establish some rapport.
Yeah, and if you think about a business, you think about Jeff graduating in 1988 from Laurier, and then starting in marketing, then ultimately evolving into sales. But how much sales has driven not just the business that I'm in? We had to attract suppliers, we had to attract investors, we had to attract a board of directors. We had to attract all these sales organizations that are part of our organization. So there's sales going on that is not like in my role as the chief salesman of this business. It's not just about selling to end use customers. It's about selling to all the partners and intermediaries that we deal with as a business. And all of those are all relationship building exercises that are well, that need to be honed. And I'm lucky that I have a business partner who's also in this business, we have about 150 employees or corporate employees, but my business partner is also a business executive. He happens to be 10 years older than I am, but we both have an educational understanding in all the functional areas of business. And his role is primarily on the portfolio and finance side, but it's very helpful that I understand his part of the business, and he's been in sales, so he understands the sales and operations side of the business, and that makes for a very strong union.
Yeah, you may have just answered my next question as well, because what I was going to ask you is sort of our last question to wrap up is, we are obviously one of the larger, more successful business and economic schools in Canada. I think it's important, as I've said, to continue to build people who go on into successful careers, and that includes successful careers in sales. You have an undergraduate degree in business, you have an MBA. What do you think that business schools should be doing to kind of encourage the skill sets we've been talking about, and really also careers in sales?
I think it's a really good question, and it's actually I've been involved a little bit with Laurier in giving back, and part of that has always been to try and be a champion for the sales and marketing. Really this sales/marketing as a career. And I think that students, whether again they be in the traditional marketing stream or marketing and economics or finance and economics, if you want to call it that, streams, just should understand that and we have at Laurier, we have the benefit of the case method to understand that businesses evolve from customers. All businesses require customers, and somebody in that business needs to be responsible for those relationships, whether they're in a face-to-face like in my business, or whether it's through other forms of sales and marketing. But taking a keen interest in that aspect of business and industry is key. And understanding that there's a tremendous amount of value that can be created from developing and exercising skills in sales and marketing. Whether that and taking those skills and applying them to consumers, and then evolving them into your general interactions with all counterparties within business. I think I'm not sure I answered your question exactly, but I think that having an like I was lucky to have been listening in the first period of that industrial marketing course at Laurier and hearing what the professor was saying about that so much of business and commerce is done face-to-face, and how important sales is. And I think that it would behoove any student of business, regardless of the discipline that they're interested in understanding that that the sales and marketing is a valuable part of the value chain, and one that should be developed in all business people. I think that's what I'd like to close on.
Yeah, that's perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you very much, Jeff.
Thanks,
fantastic
Kyle.
Conversation. I really enjoyed it. I was going to end as I was listening to you talk about a sales career and your approach to it. When I was thinking back to, I mentioned Zig Ziglar earlier, and one of his famous quotes that pops into my head all the time is, "You can have everything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want."
Exactly.
And I think that's a great place for us to leave it today. Thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Can't wait
Thank
to
you,
have this
Kyle.
conversation.
Okay, much appreciated. See you soon.